Welcome back, Wolfpack. Brolis here, and this is how to use Bisharp. So Bisharp has good stats when we look at it. There's nothing too impressive besides the 125 attack, because 65 hit points and 70 on the special defense means we're not really going to do too well from any kind of special attacks, but 100 on defense means we can tank up the occasional hit. However, we are a steel typing, so that kind of contributes to us having good defense, but it also means we're going to be weak to an earthquake. So there are some trade-offs right there, and then 70 on the speed. So 70 speed, very interesting because it's more of a tank busting speed. That a lot of tankier Pokemon, a lot of setup Pokemon are going to be slower than that, and a lot of Pokemon that won't invest in speed are going to be slower than that as well. So it is going to be good for that. However, at the same time, a lot of Pokemon outspeed you. Special attackers are going to love to have their way with you, and then that's just kind of a thing. 125 on the attack, it's a good amount of power that, you know, if we go Choice Band or if we boost into it, we're going to find those neutral one-hit KOs, or we can try to rely on coverage to get as much damage as possible, and that's pretty much going to be Bisharp. Look at its typing, it's a Steel Dark typing. Very cool typing right there, and it's going to lead to just fighting ground and fire as a weakness. We do get the poison and psychic immunities, and then our steel typing going to give us a lot of resistances. So fortunately, you know, we see grass there, we see ice, we see ghost as these resistances, and that means we're not going to be too threatened especially. So the typing does balance out our stats pretty well, and then there are just a good amount of neutral hits: fairy, electric, water, and bug. Hopping into Pokemon Showdown, we're going to see how to use Bisharp, and that's mostly just going to be playing around with the speed. For example, you can go completely uninvested in the speed and outspeed what you can, or you can go 88 EVs in the speed. 88 EVs means you're going to outspeed a +4 EV base 80 speed Pokemon. So if you're trying to outspeed 80 speed tanks or 80 speed bulky attackers, something like that, and you can just kind of change the numbers up. You can keep going up until you outspeed a lot more things, or you can keep going down and get tankier. The trade-off is up to you. What makes it even harder of a decision is that you get access to the Sucker Punch. So Sucker Punch means you're going to outspeed that Pokemon through the priority, but then you get locked in a Sucker Punch game. If they're faster than you, that's going to be an absolute nightmare because either you outspeed them with a Sucker Punch, or they're going to outspeed you if they get around that prediction. So you can get into some kind of weird mind game of, what if they're using status? Should you go for that Swords Dance or should you go for the damage? And if they're going for the damage, well, you need that Sucker Punch to get the outspeed for the damage. But if they're not, then you could have gone Swords Dance, and if you do go for the Sucker Punch and they go Setup, now they're getting their free Setup. So you're going to get in some really weird mind game situations with this, but in the end, you know, you just set up a Swords Dance and go for Stab Sucker Punch. Stab Sucker Punch is excellent. The Dark typing on Bisharp means it's going to be very powerful. That we Stab Sucker Punch into 125 base attack, we're going to be finding ridiculous amounts of damage. However, the neutral KOs are going to come off of our Life Orb or Lumberry. Lumberry is great because Bisharp, it's a Pokemon that does not want to get burned. It does not want to have anything go wrong with it. So if Bisharp gets burned, it kind of doesn't matter. Your game's going to be over. So that's going to be a huge problem, which is why you want to carry the Lumberry. However, if you have the Life Orb and you just kind of play around the Will-O-Wisp, or you just pray you don't get burned, then that's going to work out pretty well because you Swords Dance and the Sucker Punch. Now you're dealing with ridiculous amounts of base power, ridiculous amounts of damage, and then the Life Orb boosting it even more. As for your abilities, Defiant. Defiant is an interesting ability. This Pokemon's attack is raised by 2 for each of its stats lowered by an opponent. So if the opponent has an Intimidate, you're actually gaining +1 attack because you lower it then boost by 2. So this is what makes Bisharp really strong in doubles, and it's pretty much going to be like the same idea in doubles, that, you know, you just run the Swords Dance unless you get like a really good Defiant proc, and you kind of turn into an anti-Intimidate Pokemon. People will just put Bisharp on their team so that way they don't lead with as strong of an Intimidate. Because, oh, if they lead double Intimidate or even single Intimidate, now Bisharp is going to be able to just tear through with an Iron Head, Knockoff, or Sucker Punch. And Knockoff's going to be a really good move, too. If you outspeed a tank, you'll be able to remove their leftovers, you're going to be doing bonus damage, stab bonus damage, and that's going to be really nice, which is why the Lumberry works so well. That Ghost-type Pokemon are generally going to be the ones being the Will-O-Wisp. So they outspeed you, they throw out the Will-O-Wisp, and now Lumberry procs. So nothing really lost, and then you eat a super effective stab knockoff and either get knocked out, procced into your Focus Sash, and then now you just traded your Ghost-type Pokemon only because of the Lumberry item. So you can gain a lot off of this Lumberry, but then you're going to lose out KO situations if you're getting outsped, things like that. So it's a pretty serious give and take, and 4 times weakness to fighting means any fighting type Pokemon, they don't care what item you have, you're just going to die. And then we just kind of look at some other things. So if you're running the Life Orb, Pursuit is also an option. Pursuit's going to be really interesting because you can just bring in Bisharp, does have those resists. It also has a really good revenge potential. Power doubles if the foe is switching out. So it's kind of like a Sucker Punch on switching out. So you're playing a very predict heavy game with this Bisharp. Now you might have to give up the Sword Stance, or you can just kind of understand, like, I have Pursuit now. What is my goal? So it's trio dart coverage, but you have a stab option for anything your opponent's going to do. Are they setting up? Knock off. Are they going to be attacking you? Sucker Punch. Are they switching out? Pursuit. The idea is to just compound as much damage as possible on the opponent, and with this, having the speed probably a bit more beneficial because we're not looking to set up. You know, with the Swords Dance, we take that hit, we get our Swords Dance, and then we convert Sucker Punches. Now, if they are going to be using physical attacks against us, we might be in that 2-hit KO range, so that gives us some leeway. You know, we would knock off into an Iron Head. If they get flinched from that Iron Head, that could be pretty nice, and that's really how the Bisharp is going to play. You know, you just find the situation, you adapt to it, and then you try to break down the opponent as much as possible. And then we also have Assault Vest. Assault Vest is really good because it's going to make it to where you can have very high hit points, have very high special defense, but you aren't going to be able to use the Swords Dance. So this is where Defiant is very important. You need to make that double switch prediction. Now, if your opponent switches out and then you switch in and they switch into their Intimidate, if they have it, that works out really well. Assault Vest in Double Battles is really strong because you see a lot of special attacks that try to hit both opponents or something like that. You know, a Hyper Voice, you're going to be able to tank up a Hyper Voice really well, then dish out an Iron Head, and you just really need that Defiant proc. Also, on that, we can take out Swords Dance and we can put in Power Up Punch. So Power Up Punch instead of Swords Dance. So pretty much this exact set, Assault Vest, Power Up Punch goes right there. And that's how you're going to be able to play the Assault Vest one. You know, you get that +1. Now you're still tanking up stupid amounts of damage, and you can throw out Sucker Punch. You can go and throw out whatever moves you want to do and try to make it count. Is this going to be knock off Iron Head? And that's another interesting thing about Bisharp. Bisharp got a substantial buff because now it can just go and obliterate Fairy-type Pokemon. Like, Bisharp is a very, very powerful Fairy killer. So, Sylveon has base 60 speed. A lot of other Fairy-type Pokemon aren't fast or have enough damage for you directly, and that's why we just get into, like, these really interesting trade situations with a Bisharp. Like, Sylveon, you just outspeed it and blow it up with an Iron Head, and Bisharp is going to be good at that for a lot of Fairy-type Pokemon. So, it is really powerful now because of the Fairy typing, but you still have to play around it, and you still have to play with it just right. As for other things Bisharp does, as we mentioned, for VGC, Focus Sash is a must. Double Battles, Focus Sash is a must. But here's where things get interesting, like the Sucker Punch. Do you want the knockoff? Do you want the coverage? You know, Low Kick is going to be really nice. Low Kick means you get to just go and just knock down a Kangaskhan really well. Also, you get to hit other Bisharps. You get to hit other Pokemon that are dark. You get really good coverage and utility off that Low Kick. And then Iron Head, again, for the fairies. But Sucker Punch. Sucker Punch means we're not going to be able to knock off something like a Cresselia, and we're going to have to play around it. So we are going to be losing our guaranteed Dark-type stab. We are gaining Sucker Punch, so if the Pokemon is faster than us, we just go run them over, and we call it a good day. As for this, again, like speed creep scenarios and whatnot, you can put it on some kind of Tailwind team. You put Bisharp on a Tailwind, that can be very powerful. So you only need 100 EVs, invest in the speed, outspeed most of the Pokemon, and then if you're running dedicated Tailwind, Sucker Punch still is kind of a good thing to consider because there are Pokemon that will run priority, but if you have knockoff, it's going to be more damage faster. So as long as you're not hitting a Mega Pokemon, it's just going to be more damage than the Sucker Punch, and you're playing up the very high amounts of speed. So best case scenario, the opponent comes in, they have an Intimidate, and then you get a boost off the Defiant. After that, you use Protect, and then you have your Pokemon set up a Tailwind, and then you just go and obliterate everything. Iron Head for fairies, knockoff for anything that doesn't need an Iron Head, and then Low Kick for the coverage, and then you also have that Pokemon that set up Tailwind. If it has some offensive capabilities for itself, then you can just convert a lot of 2-hit KOs and Bisharp becomes a terror. But again, Bisharp, very, very, very vulnerable to status. If that happens, that could be pretty bad. If the Pokemon resists you or has fighting or has some kind of way of, like, you know, if it has a Focus Sash into a fighting type move, you're going to have a hard time. So it is a very high risk, high reward Pokemon. But at the same time, you know, if you go back to this setup and you get a Swords Dance and you Sucker Punch an opponent's team down, that's a very real possibility as well. So things can happen with Bisharp that are good and bad, and it's a pretty solid Pokemon overall. If you guys enjoyed the video, that's how you use Bisharp, and I hope you all have a nice day. Thank you for watching.